Well, hello. Catherine Langman here, and welcome back to the Productpreneur Success podcast. And on the show today, we're going to be sticking with the theme of building brand visibility in order to grow the size of your engaged audience so that you have more people to sell to and obviously, win over more customers and ultimately make more money. And I think you will love this episode because it is something a little bit different that I'm going to be sharing with you today. It's going to be one of those sort of mini training episodes where I go through a strategy step by step with you. And really, I guess where this starts with is the fact that as a brand owner, you're going to make more money when your customers or your stockists, if you wholesale as well, buy your products, right? But in order to do that, in order to grow your sales and revenue, either direct to consumers with your e-commerce retail customers, or of course your wholesale stockists if you do wholesale, you can't just sit back and twiddle your thumbs. We need to be proactive about this. And time again, I hear brand owners and distributors complain about how they just don't know how to grow. They don't know how to get win new customers or stockists. And frankly, it's all a little bit overwhelming, I guess, with all the options. And then when they do win customers and stockists, they kind of don't know how to keep those ones that they've got engaged and placing repeat orders. Does any of that sound familiar? I remember when I first started my first business, which was a modern cloth nappy brand, I noticed that a lot of customers who bought and tried the products generally fell in love with them. But the hard bit was actually getting the products in front of people and encouraging them to take that leap of faith and to try this type of product, which, let's face it, was a pretty new and different thing for most at the time. And so that was really the hardest part. And the thing was, it wasn't a product that was readily available in a lot of stores, and the other part of it was that trying to demonstrate how to use this new thing online to show what it was and how to use it, it was really, really hard. It was definitely the sort of product that had a higher sales conversion rate when people could see it in person. They could touch it, they could see how it worked, they could ask questions and all of that kind of stuff, essentially try before they buy. And there are a lot of product categories that have similar barriers to purchase online. It doesn't mean people don't buy online, they do, but it's just harder for customers to make a decision. And, for example, we want to smell the perfume first, or we want to try on the sunglasses first, or we want to test the foundation is the right color first, or we want to try on the shoes for fit and comfort, and so on and so forth, before we're comfortable with spending the money. Now, if you can resonate with any of that, either the bit where you feel like more people just need to know about your brand and your products and that you even exist as an option, or that your customers want to see in person before, or try before they buy, then doing an expo or a trade show might be a great addition to your marketing strategy. And I will actually say there are some really great markets around as well that can help you achieve this. So, I guess that's what we're going to go through in today's podcast episode. And in fact, we're going to cover the 6 phases of a successful expo or trade show. And I promise you that if you follow this process, you will make more money. In the past, some of the clients that I've worked with on this sort of a strategy have made tens of thousands of dollars just from one show, thanks to this 6-phase strategy. So, shall we dive in? I think we should. Now, to kick off, before we go into these 6 phases, I just really wanted to touch on what the difference is between an expo and a trade show for, just in case there's any confusion there. And so an expo is always a consumer show. So that's when the end customer is coming in to browse and buy. And a trade show is always business to business. So it's where if you're wholesaling and you're trying to get in front of potential stockists, then that's the kind of show that you would go to. So typically with a trade show, they're not actually transacting and paying you money at the show, but they would be placing orders or expressing interest. So you would get leads as well as orders. Whereas at an expo, you're usually able to transact at the show, and you should be hopefully walking home with, a much bigger bank account or cash tin if you have one of those. So let's go through these 6 phases, because I think it can be super helpful just to really break it down into a step-by-step process. I think you probably all know, if you've been listening to me for a little while, I love a good list, and I like to have a bit of an organized approach to how I'm doing things. And, you know, for me, that comes from a place of I'm actually not a particularly detailed process-oriented person. I would make a terrible accountant, you know. I just don't like that kind of, my brain doesn't operate happily in that detail space, but I like to be organized, obviously, and I also like to just rely on a process that I've done before. So I'll try and figure out a really good process first, and then I don't have to think about it anymore. So I can kind of, you know, go back to the operating in the space and in the disciplines that I excel in. And you know, that's usually going to be in the visionary kind of creative thinking space, as opposed to this detailed process space. So when you have a really solid process and you know what needs to happen, you don't need to think about it anymore. It takes that kind of stress and overwhelm out of things. So that's why I love a good process. Anyway, that was just by the by. So let's imagine that you have been thinking about doing an expo or trade show later this year. So I'm recording this episode and it's going to come out in February, and a number of my clients are gearing up to do a show in Sydney in February. So, you know, it's probably a little bit too late to do a lot of this process by now, but I know you guys are all over it like a rash, and you kind of, you know, well through your organizing stages. So preferably you want to start, I mean, in an ideal world, you'd be looking at booking these events, you know, maybe 6 months in advance. But if you're looking at it shorter to that, hopefully you've got still maybe 3 months to get ready before the show is actually on. So in those months in advance, really what you're going to be doing is, you know, number one, you're going to be booking your booth space. And what I would suggest there is really review, you know, making sure that you're reviewing the floor plan and trying to choose a space that faces the oncoming foot traffic. And we'll talk about the reason why for that in a little while. Sometimes you don't always get a choice about where you go, but if you book far enough in advance, you do usually get a little bit of choice. And oftentimes you'll also be able to see who a few of the other exhibitors are. I mean, particularly the ones who do a lot of shows and they're booking them all, you know, for the year ahead. And so those would already be on the floor plan. And, you know, I mean, the point there is, number one, you don't want to be right next door to a major competitor. And number two, it's kind of nice if you can be next door to someone who sells something that's a little bit complementary to yours. And so the same customers or the same kind of stockists might be interested in both, right? So then it becomes a little bit of a destination. When it comes to doing any kind of expo or trade show or even a market stall, there's this phrase, a crowd attracts a crowd. And so, you know, if you're already next to somebody who has the same kind of complementary product and the same kind of customer base or audience, then that's going to really help in that regard. So, you know, at this booking stage, you know, you're trying to choose your location, and you're going to be reviewing the paperwork, and you're looking into things like insurance requirements and any forms or, you know, deadlines that you need to submit them by and all of that kind of stuff. But I also think at this point, it's worth really at least considering what the actual objectives are for the show. And that's going to differ depending on what type of show it is. Obviously, if it's a consumer show, expo, versus a trade show, which is just for your business to business selling. And so that, you know, is it a show where you expect to actually sell on the stand? You know, in which case, how many new customers do you want to be winning from that show? Obviously, you want to at least cover your costs with this endeavor, but hopefully you want to make money too, right? So how many new customers do you need? Or if it's a trade show, how many stockists do you want to win? And then the next kind of step would be, how many leads do you want? And then overall, you know, how much revenue do you want to make, you know, whether it's from orders on the stand or from orders that you take for stockists that you'll be fulfilling later. So really understanding what those objectives are is really super important. If you've never, ever done a show before, one of the objectives needs to be that you're gathering data from this kind of an event. Obviously, you'd be doing a lot of research in advance as well to make sure that it is the kind of show that you should be at with your sort of product and your sort of target audience, but also it's about gathering data. Okay, so second phase is a little bit closer to the date, maybe 2 months prior to the event. You want to be planning your booth design. And this is really, really important. I mean, hopefully this goes without saying. There's 2 reasons. It needs to be functional with how you need to use the space, which we'll talk about, but also it needs to be eye-catching. So the first thing that I like to consider is how you will attract the eye from a distance. And this is why, I like to look at trying to book a space that it faces the oncoming traffic for this reason. Because if it doesn't, then, it's more accidental, I guess, or a little bit hit and miss, that people will actually see you stand and come and check you out. One thing that I always found really, really helpful at being able to attract the eye from a distance was using large format lifestyle images against the booth walls. Now, that doesn't necessarily lend itself to every single type of product, but it definitely did for me. I was selling in the baby space. So, there's nothing cuter than having a really cute baby printed, large format on the posters. All of the parents to be were going a little bit gaga about that. So that always worked well for me. But have a think about, how you could design your stand so that it does really catch the attention of the visitors to these shows from a distance as they're walking down the aisles of the show. And then, how are you going to attract and engage visitors as they approach near your stand? Like I said before, there's this phrase that a crowd attracts a crowd, but when it's the start of the day, nobody has a crowd yet. So you need to have some kind of a strategy that will bring people over to your stand. There's different ways that you can do it. I mean, obviously, if you have a really beautiful looking stand and it's got the sort of a product that the show visitors think looks like something they should check out, then that's obviously going to help. Sometimes also, you might have something that really entices people to come over. It could be someone standing out the front holding something that they're giving away, or that they're demonstrating, or taste testing, or there's various different ways that you can kind of attract people as they're getting nearer to your stand. And then, obviously attracting and gaining people's attention is one thing, but then how are you going to use the space? So how are you going to present your products? Do you need shelving? Do you need racks? Do you need hang cells? Like how is going to be the best way to showcase your products? I used to do it in a couple of different ways. Number one, we did have the shelving and things like that, but we also had a nappy change table, and we sort of set it up a little bit like you would in a nursery, and so that people could see it kind of in the sort of situation that they would live with, right? And that'll actually also worked a little bit at the trade shows as well, although there we're trying to display the products as they would see it on their own shop shelves, so a little bit different there. But then how are you going to demonstrate your products? So depending on what you sell, I mean, obviously for me, there was that process of education because it was such a new product category at the time. People sort of didn't really know what it was or how it worked or anything like that. So we literally had, this doll that was made to basically average newborn size. And it was one of those ones that kind of looked eerily lifelike in the face. We used this doll to demonstrate how to use the products and that sort of thing, but and we had a couple of plinths set up so that there was more than one space to demonstrate. So there was the nappy change table that we used for that purpose, and then a couple of these plinths. They always work well too, because you can kind of take the lid off and put all your handbags and things inside to keep those out of the way. But, like if it's something different, like, maybe you have tea, or maybe you have some kind of food substance, or skincare, or whatever, you're going to need to be able to, get people to come over and check it out, maybe taste it, maybe try it on their skin, or whatever the case may be. So have a think about how you're going to demonstrate your products. Then you also need to be able to take the orders. Okay, so this might be, it might be less about doing paperwork these days now that everything's digital, although I think it is worth having hard copy options if, all the technology fails on the day. But you need to be able to work out, how are you going to take those orders? How are you going to take payments if it is a consumer show? Or, it might be allowed at a trade show as well to actually take payments on the day. Do you need, and something else for this stand, do you need to book additional lighting or flooring or signage, or hire any furniture or anything like that? So really having a think through that whole space from a design as well as functional perspective. Next, you want to plan for how you will achieve those sales goals. So remember, we spoke earlier in phase 1 where you want to set the objectives. So, think about this kind of similar to your e-commerce sales, right? So, with e-commerce, you're going to have a conversion rate and an average order value. And so you'll be able to work out, okay, how many orders do I need to take, and how many people do I need to get to my website in order to make the money that I want to make? And it's similar at trade shows and expos as well, and markets. So if you, and obviously if you've never done one of these shows, you're kind of estimating before you go in as to how many conversations you get to have, right? But have a think about how many orders you do need to take in order to meet the goals that you have. And so to help with this, I don't ever suggest going into one of these shows just taking your normal range and kind of selling that as is, right? I think you'll find, just from a buying psychology perspective, visitors are coming to these shows expecting to have some kind of exclusive offer once they're there. And that doesn't really matter whether it's a consumer expo or a trade show. There's usually that expectation coming into it, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to be doing a big, massive, deep discount or anything like that. But what I would suggest is that you come up with a low and a medium and a higher priced kind of show special that you can have available at the show. And so this works well for consumer shows as well as trade shows. And generally speaking, I try and price and value stack that medium one so that it's kind of a bit of a no-brainer order, because it's got so much more value for the price point that it would be silly to go for the cheaper one, if that makes sense. Obviously some people still do, and that's totally fine. But I'll tell you now, like we used to very easily sell those packages that were worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars at these shows. So come up with those show specials in advance. And something else that I'll say here is, and this doesn't necessarily hold for everyone, but I've noticed this in my own business at that time, as well as with client businesses as well, that oftentimes if you just do a % off discount across the board at a trade show or an expo, people can't quite work out in their head what value that is for the buyer, right? Whereas if you actually, do some sort of a bundle where the value is worth this price, but you get it for this price, and then this, you're basically saving X dollars, you literally give it to them in dollar value amount, people can see it so much more easily. They can see how much they're saving and, what the dollar value of the offer is. So that often seems to work better from a conversion perspective. But like I said, value packs is one way to do it. You can try the discount side of things, maybe a sliding scale of discount for your wholesale type trade show, so obviously, if they place bigger bulk orders, then they might get a bigger discount, they might get free shipping or whatever the case may be. So figuring out what these packages are and then how many of them you kind of need to sell to meet your objectives. And then you need to prepare some marketing collateral. You do need to have some printed stuff to hand out at these shows. Doesn't matter whether it is a consumer expo or a trade show, you're going to be handing some stuff out. Something that I always noticed at both types of shows is that oftentimes that, the visitors to these shows would be, they'd start out at the first part of the day just visiting all of the stands, and getting the pitch, getting the information, and then they'd take all of that printed stuff away with them. They'd go and have lunch either at the show or outside somewhere, and then they'd come back in the afternoon ready, with a decision made to place their order. So, if it's a consumer show, you might just have a small kind of pamphlet or a small brochure or something along those lines. You definitely want to have a copy of the show specials to hand out, and how to get it. So obviously you're going to promote your website as well, but you want to invite them back to buy at your stand because it's an exclusive show special, right? If it's wholesale, you're going to have a range brochure. You might have a printed wholesale application form. Again, you'll have the show specials, that sort of thing. Something else that you might have at a consumer show is some bags to for customers to take away once they've bought the products. That's great advertising too. So I had the reusable shopping bags made and printed with I think it was like the character from our logo and our web address or something like that. And so that's great advertising when customers are walking around the show and other people can see it. At wholesale shows, the trade shows, I used to have a smaller bag that had, all of the printed stuff in it. And then I had this little kind of card. So our logo had a little what do you call it? A illustration, like a cartoon baby, basically. It was kind of cute. Anyway, so I had a card printed out that had that, cartoon baby on the front, and then it had some information on the back. But I actually had little mini nappies made out of our fabric and had them, put them on like it was, the baby's nappy. And they were kind of swinging with it from a ribbon off the handle of the bag. And again, that was great advertising because these people, these leads, these prospects, they would go walking around the show with this thing. And that was like, it was advertising. Other people came to our stand. They came looking for our stand because they'd seen this stuff wandering around the show. Next part of this phase is selecting who's going to be attending the show from your team. If you are a solo operator, you are probably going to want to hire in some casual help for the event. I know some of the brand owners that I work with and that I have worked with over the years, they might get a distributor or a major stockist to come and help. And then, obviously they're going to get some of the revenue and the leads from the event. My own business, I had some casual sales reps that would come in and do the shows for me, as well as over the years, obviously built my own team as well, and they could come and run the shows. So it wasn't all on me, but I mean, obviously in the early days, it was pretty much all on me, but you definitely want to have some help. You don't want to be left in the scenario where you can't even go to the toilet in in the middle of the show. But yeah, so you can usually go with a couple of people on the stand, but if you do anticipate being super busy, you're probably going to need a little bit extra help, especially around the middle of the day. I always found that was the busiest time for me. Now, some of you might be heading off to international shows. So some of our clients have been doing a little bit of that now that travel's opened back up. And of course, if it is an international show, you've got to make sure everyone that's going has that valid passport. Something else to consider for your stand would be booking your lead scanner. I think most shows now have that sort of baked into the package. Sometimes it's part of the package. Sometimes you have to pay extra for it, but I definitely highly recommend this. Nothing worse than trying to collect email addresses from people by handwriting. That just is ripe for there being, errors when you're transcribing, not to mention you just won't want to. It'd be just too much hard work to try and type all of that up afterwards. So you definitely want to be quickly recording the name and contact details using that lead scanner when people come in. And if it's a consumer show, you're probably going to do some sort of a giveaway as well, just so that you can start building your email list that way. Now, obviously, if you are planning to actually take money on the stand, then you've got to make sure you've covered off the payment options. So whether it's a Square reader or some kind of portable FPOS machine, that sort of thing, you're probably going to want to have a laptop or an iPad there to process orders online as well. But just in case the internet goes down or the Wi-Fi goes down, just have some printed order forms as well. It can just be super helpful as a backup. All right, the next phase, I can't remember what phase we're up to here. I think it's the third one, is a couple of weeks before the show begins, so 2 to 4 weeks out. You want to make sure all of your giveaways, your products, and your signage or anything that needs to be designed and or manufactured is ready in time. You want to be planning how you'll get the freight to the booth and any other, booth items that you need for the show itself, getting all of the logistics side of it done. I remember one show in particular, I reckon this was probably the most stressful one I did. We had a bit of a delay with some manufacturing, and our factory literally had to ship stuff directly to the Expo location, and we'd been tracking this delivery for a good couple of weeks. I was like, oh, it's not going to get there, and just freaking out. Anyway, and this was interstate from me, so I was traveling interstate and get to the show grounds where we were going to set up our booth the day before the show opened, thinking, as far as I was aware, it hadn't been delivered and it wasn't going to get there on time. And there were the boxes literally outside the roller door of the Expo location. Oh my goodness. So don't cut it that fine if you can avoid it. But also during this phase, you want to start beginning some pre-show marketing activities. So if it's a trade, or actually it doesn't matter if it's a trade show or an expo, I always wanted to know which of my competitors might be attending and trying to get a sense of what they might be doing. If they were releasing any details about what they would be doing or offering at the show, but just kind of getting a sense of who was there as well. And if it's a wholesale trade show, you might start reaching out to prospects as well as existing stockers and really trying to, book some appointments and trying to entice people to come and check you out there and, get some conversations lined up already. If it's a consumer show, start putting some content out on social media and let people know that you're going to be there. And it's not just about, hey, if you're in Melbourne, come and check us out at this expo. We're going to be there on stand, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty boring, right? Got to make it a little bit more fun and entertaining than that. Always, I love to think of the content that you might share that as infotainment. So, make it a little bit fun, but also you want to kind of tease the fact that you'll have some show specials and, you really want to meet up with your customers and your potential customers and all that kind of stuff. So you can do that on social media as well as email if you have an email list. Also during this phase, you want to be making sure you've confirmed your travel details. So you've got, travel, transport, accommodation, all of that kind of stuff sorted. Next phase, I think this is phase 4 that we're up to now. So this is the last few days and weeks before the show. So you want to really make sure during this phase that you and your booth staff know the show goals and sales strategy. Okay. Now here is where you really need to have internalized your brand's elevator pitch, if you want to phrase it that way. I like to think of it in terms of a product value statement or a brand value statement, but generally speaking, when you're at these events, people come up to your stand, or you've enticed them and attracted them to your stand, you're probably going to open the conversation with a question of some kind. And, you want to gather a little bit of quick information about this, this prospect, whether it's a retail store or an end consumer, but you want to start doing a little bit of information gathering there so that then you can actually present your product value statement in a way that's meaningful for them. So always think about in terms of emotion, logic, emotion. So, this is the problem. Here's the logical explanation of how we solve that. And then here's how that makes you feel. Like, what this means for you is blah, blah, blah. So you want to start practicing that kind of sales conversation process so that it's, you're not winging it on the day. A little bit of it is going to be winging it because obviously everybody's different and you're going to be talking to lots of different people. So you'll have to be a little bit quick thinking on the day. But if you've at least thought through what you might say and how you might, really shine the best light on what you have to offer, then it's not going to feel so confronting on the day. Something else that you want to be making sure, just from a logistical perspective at this last few days before the event, having some supplies on hand, pens, paper, scissors. I used to make sure I had Velcro hook and loop tape. I would have blue tack, duct tape, masking tape, all of that kind of stuff. Tissues, lollies, for some sustenance. Laptop, iPad, PowerPoint, you want your adapter, your charger cords, all of that kind of stuff. Printed order forms for backup. So make sure you head off to Officeworks with that. Also, just even having a USB USB stick that's got any print files on it. So if you run out of some of the printed stuff, you can just quickly go to the local closest Officeworks and print some more. And then even things like having healthy snacks and bottled water there as well. So then we are up to probably the phase that we all mentally go to when we first book these events, and that's during the show. And the first thing that I want to mention here is have fun. Like, you've done all the work really to prepare. So now you just want to have as much fun as possible. And I know that, it can feel really full on and stressful and pretty intense in the lead up to one of these shows, particularly if you've never done one before. But even if you have, but you haven't quite nailed it and you're going through this more organized process for the first time, it can feel like a lot of work beforehand. So, there is that fear, I think, that when, that it's just going to be overwhelming while we're there and all of that kind of stuff. But it is a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun. You're talking to, your ideal customers, and that, they're humans, right? So you just want to have as much fun with them as possible. Hopefully you really love your own brand and your own products, and the passion that you have for that is going to come through. So keep that front of mind and just try and go into it with the intention of enjoying yourself as much as possible. But just on a practical note, during the event, I want you to try and keep track of how many conversations that you have every day. So how many people are you speaking to each day, and don't just have one total, like literally have a total for every single day of the show. There's generally going to be a trend for you that 1 or 2 days are going to be the busier days, and then, another day might not be as busy. Keep track of how many sales you actually make, or orders that you actually take on each of those days as well. And then also keep track of, what your top selling products or bundles are. And as you go through each day of the show, you can start to make a few tweaks to your wording, to the language you're using in your conversations, and to how you're demonstrating the products to help improve your conversions as you go. And I would be doing this all the time. Like, there would be one conversation where I'd sort of be, feel afterwards like, oh, I said that, and that really, really helped them to make a decision. So I'm going to work that into my regular conversation and that sort of thing. Now, hopefully you'll already have realized why I'm asking you to keep track of those sorts of statistics day by day, because in the final phase, which is your post-show phase, you want to also analyze the results, right? But before we get to that, in the post-show phase, we're also going to do some follow-up sales process as well. Doesn't matter whether this is a consumer show or a trade show, you really want to make sure that you are following up. There's this acronym, I think it's FITFU. The fortune is in the follow-up. And this is, this is just so true. And so I really want to emphasize this. So typically you would go out with a bit of a follow-up offer that, the show specials have been extended for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. You can decide, of course, but don't make it too long because then people won't take action. And you should have a list of leads by now, whether it's a consumer expo or a trade show, you should have a list of leads that you can follow up with on email. If it's a trade show, get on the phone as well. Do a little bit of follow-up that way and try and close as many deals as you can. And get as many orders as you can from that follow-up. Now, when you're doing that follow-up on email with the leads the lead scanner getting everyone's email addresses, don't just add all of those emails into your main list, because some of them are going to, a larger proportion of them will unsubscribe after that first mail out. Then, so you want to kind of flush them out before you add all of these contacts to your main list. So have a separate list for that follow-up sequence, and then you can add them to your main list. But then, of course, after that is all done and dusted, you need to analyze the results, right? So you need to document the metrics, you need to work out what those conversion rates look like, and you also just need to document what you felt worked really well and what didn't work very well. Or, so basically it's like a keep list or a discard list. Don't get too emotionally caught up in any of that. It's just I'm going to do that again, or I'm not going to do that again, and document it, because it might be months or a year before you do your next show. Pretty hard to remember all of those details, so you really want to take a few minutes to sit down and work all of that out. So that's the 6 phases for you of a successful expo or trade show. And as a result of following this 6-phase expo process and trade show process, you will successfully get more leads and convert more new customers than you would certainly by just winging it. And in fact, I consistently found that I had a much higher conversion rate and a higher ROI than almost any other marketing strategy when I had my brand. Now, that won't be the same for all of you, I know, but it would be for many of you. Certainly, there's the potential for many of you, right? And so for me, it made investing into the shows, both financially and with my time, absolutely worth it, right? And many of my clients have found the same as well. And, just to, I guess, put a final kind of, check mark, yes, this is worth doing, it is also building your brand awareness. Even though you might not win as many orders as the number of people that you speak to, and certainly not, compared to the number of people who see your brand and see your stand or might observe you demonstrating your products, that sort of thing, you have just successfully really expanded the size of the audience that your brand enjoys. So, building this brand visibility, building brand awareness, really increasing the size of your audience that is now engaged, right? And so this is crucial. And what you find, the more of these sorts of brand awareness type activities that you build into your strategy over time, and it doesn't all just have to be an expo or a trade show. I spoke a little bit about some other brand awareness building strategies on the show last week. The more that you can build this in, you start to see a snowball effect over time. Your paid advertising and your conversion generating strategies, email ads, that sort of thing, they start to really improve and accelerate as well, because you are tapping into this bigger pool of people that know your brand exists and really love what you have to sell. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And on that note, that does bring me to the end of today's episode. I hope that you have enjoyed it, that you're feeling a little bit inspired or motivated to perhaps consider a trade show or expo as part of your marketing strategy this year. And of course, if you would like some help to speed up that process of learning or implementing and getting results faster in your business, please reach out to me. There are a variety of ways that I can help you depending on what stage of business that you're at. This is the stuff that I do every day and love to do every day. And I love working with brand owners like yourself. So whether you are looking for coaching to, help you learn and implement things faster and better, or if you're looking to outsource to an expert, just head over to katherineLangman.com/work-with-me to find out how we could help work together. And we'll pop that link on the show notes page as well. But for now, have a fabulous rest of the day and week, and I look forward to being with you on the show again next week. Bye for now.